Hello, my fellow art makers. Let's talk about something really fun. Let's talk about claymation. What is claymation, you may ask? Well, claymation is pretty simple, actually. It's a process by which clay is molded and photographed, and those photographs are then put together to create an animation. See, what a claymation artist will do is they will take a clay figure, mold it a little bit, take a picture, mold it a little more, take another picture, mold it a little more, and so on and so on. And when they put those photos together, it looks like the clay is morphing, changing, or, in some cases, moving. Remember back in our animation lesson where I said that animation is pretty much breaking down an action into individual parts? Well, you can do the same thing in claymation, except instead of drawing the parts, you sculpt them. Now, claymation is a super fun art form, but it's not without its challenges. See, it's generally easier to draw something than it is to sculpt something. And for traditional animation, all you'd have to do is draw the character in different positions. But in claymation, naturally, you have to sculpt out those positions. And clay is kind of a difficult medium to work with, because if it gets too thin, it'll bend, and if it gets too hard, it'll crumble. And if that happens in your movie, that means you gotta start everything over. You can't erase it like you would a drawing. But fortunately, claymation artists have come up with a few tricks to kind of make things easier. See, most claymation artists will make their figures really thick and really stocky, so you can bend them for the different poses without having to add or lose any clay. Also, claymation artists will sometimes use wires inside the figure to give them a little bit more support. And lastly, claymation artists will have several versions of the same figure on hand. That way, if you make a little mistake, all you have to do is swap out the figure and nobody knows the difference. So, speaking of claymation artists, there's one artist and one studio that you've probably seen before. So, there's a fellow in England by the name of Nick Park, and he is a really spectacular claymation artist. Now, you've probably never heard of Mr. Park, but you've probably heard of Wallace and Gromit or Shaun the Sheep. Now, I bring up Nick Park because he is one of the most popular and most famous claymation artists today. When he first started claymation, it was when he was quite young and still a student. And believe it or not, he did his first movie all by himself. Now, Nick Park's first claymation movie was, as you can imagine, a Wallace and Gromit movie. Now, remember when I said that claymation is a little harder than traditional animation? Because, it takes time to sculpt everything? And remember when I said Nick Park worked on his first movie by himself? Well, guess how long it took him to finish that movie? 7 years! It took Nick Park 7 years to complete a movie that was only about an hour long. Now, here's my challenge for you guys. I'm not asking you guys to make a 7-year movie, but I do have a very simple drawing of a character that could easily be a claymation figure. And it's a simple animation that's composed of 1, 2, 3 simple poses. This little blue blobby guy here. Now what I want you to do is draw out these 1, 2, 3 poses with your own character. Now, here's the catch. This character has to be a character that can be sculpted out of clay. Now, I'm not asking you to sculpt the character. I'm asking you to design a character that could be sculpted. So remember, no really skinny limbs because that stuff is going to bend and break, and not too much detail because if you were going to give this to someone like Nick Park, they would have such a hard time sculpting in all those details. So, I want you guys to design your very own claymation character. And if you want something a little bit more challenging, I want you to look through the little otter animation I have coming up and pause it at 1, 2, 3 different points. And then I want you to draw your own character in those 3 positions, because that'll kind of give you an idea of how claymation sort of works, and it'll let you see the different parts that make up a whole movie. With that being said, I hope you guys have a lot of fun drawing, and I will see you again next time.